There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from exhaustion. A hush that isn't tranquil, it's sacred. And if you've ever sat in that silence, if you felt your body go quiet in a way that even you can't explain, you already know this isn't about absence, it's about awakening. There comes a moment, soft, sudden, when something within you decides to stop reaching. It's not loud, it doesn't announce itself, you just find yourself no longer interested in proving, pleasing, performing. The noise of the world becomes unbearable, not because it's too loud, but because it no longer speaks your language. What once made you feel seen now feels like distortion. What once excited you now feels empty. And in that space, a strange longing arises, not for someone, but for something unnamed. A pull towards stillness, like a tide drawing you inward. Maybe you've stopped seeking relationships, not out of bitterness, but because the connection you crave feels deeper than what you've known. Maybe your body doesn't ache to be touched, but to be listened to. Maybe the hunger isn't for passion, but for presence. And maybe, just maybe, you're not broken for wanting less noise. You're awakening because of it. Carl Jung once said that everything we repress returns as fate, and for many women, the constant seeking, the approval, the validation, the being desired, becomes a mask so practiced we forget it's a performance. But when that mask cracks, when the chasing grows tiresome, something ancient begins to stir. It isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the start of a deeper voice, one we've kept buried beneath expectation. The world is so good at convincing women that their value lives outside of them, that silence is failure, that stillness is emptiness, that abstinence is lack. But what if silence is not the absence of life, but the beginning of it? What if the woman who withdraws is not fading, but becoming whole? What if what looks like detachment is really a return to herself? You begin to feel a shift, not instantly, but undeniably. The drooms become clearer, the intuition sharper, the distractions you once chased feel like static, and then you realize the body has gone silent because the soul is ready to speak. The constant external stimulation once dulled that voice. Now, in the stillness, you begin to hear it again. It's a voice that whispers, not shouts, that doesn't rush, only waits. And its message is never desperate. It simply says, I'm still here. Beneath the need to be chosen, beneath the habit of seeking, beneath the pain of abandonment, I was here before all of it. And I will be here when it all fades. There's a beauty in that realization, but also a discomfort, because now you can't unsee what you've seen. You can't pretend the surface is enough. You can't make yourself go back to the smallness you once accepted as love. And that's when the real work begins, not outside, but within. Not by chasing more, but by sitting with what already is. People will misunderstand. Friends will worry. Family might say you've become too quiet, too isolated. But what they don't understand is that this isn't withdrawal. It's immersion. You are not disappearing from the world, you're diving beneath it. The outer life pauses so the inner life can speak. And it speaks not in words, but in symbols, memories, dreams, and longings. Jung called this the encounter with the shadow, the parts of yourself you've avoided, disowned, repressed, the hunger to be loved at any cost, the patterns that repeat in every relationship, the ache for validation dressed up as romance. When you stop chasing, these parts rise, not to haunt you, to free you. And that's why abstinence, real, soul-led abstinence, isn't a denial of pleasure, it's a reclamation of power. You stop giving your body to places your soul has not been invited. You stop trading intimacy for attention. You stop craving a gaze that doesn't see you, because now you see yourself, and that changes everything. But let's not romanticize the process. It isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's brutal. There are nights when the silence feels like a scream, when the bed feels too big, when the world feels too far. And in those moments, it's easy to doubt, to wonder if you've made a mistake, to ache for even the wrong kind of connection, just to feel something again. That's the test. Not to resist the longing, but to feel it without letting it govern you. To understand that pain doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're healing. That you're not going backwards. You're going deeper. There's a point in the journey when you stop fitting into the roles you once played. Not the lover, not the muse, not the girl who always smiled. Just you. No titles, no audience. And that nakedness can feel terrifying, because when you stop being who the world expects, who are you? The ego doesn't like that question. It scrambles for identity. It tells you to get back out there, to date, to distract, to prove you're still desirable. But your soul is done performing. It's calling you to wait, to listen, to become someone who no longer needs to be chosen because she has already chosen herself. And in that waiting, in that silence, the transformation begins. It's not dramatic. It's not something you can post about. It happens in how you carry your breath, and how you respond to longing, and how you sit with your own company and realize you actually enjoy it. You begin to feel your energy changing. Where it once spilled out freely, now it gathers inward. Where you once reached outward for reassurance, you now ground into your own presence. This is not rejection of others, it's reunion with self. That's the truth no one tells you. The woman who steps away from the world doesn't disappear. She becomes magnetic. Not because she's performing, but because she's no longer available for anything that doesn't honor her. She radiates not to attract, but to affirm her own light. The wild woman awakens here, not in noise, in sacred quiet. This is not a message for everyone. It's not meant to be. It's for those who have begun to feel that strange ache for something deeper, who have tired of pretending, who no longer find comfort in half-hearted love and noisy validation. It's for the ones who feel like they don't quite belong anywhere anymore. That's not exile. That's initiation. So if your body has gone quiet, if you find yourself longing for silence more than stimulation, if the old games no longer satisfy, maybe you're not falling apart. Maybe you're finally falling inward, into the part of you that's been waiting, not to be saved, but to be seen. And that part of you, she's not asleep. She's preparing, gathering, becoming.
There's a strange kind of discomfort that comes when you finally stop pretending, not just pretending for others, but for yourself. You reach a moment where you can no longer lie about what nourishes you and what drains you. The silence, once unfamiliar, now becomes your compass. And yet, even as you begin to trust it, there are moments when it feels unbearable, as if the whole world is still spinning on one rhythm and you've chosen another entirely. This is where most people turn back, where the ache for companionship or the echo of an old identity begins to whisper again. You remember what it was like to be held, to be wanted. Even if it was never real, it was familiar. And in our most vulnerable moments, the familiar can feel like safety even when it never truly was. You scroll through your memories like a photo album, and sometimes you ache, not for the person, but for the version of yourself who didn't yet know what she knows now. The girl who still believed that if she was beautiful enough, soft enough, accommodating enough, she'd be chosen. You grieve for her, but you don't want to be her again. So, you stay, even when the bed feels cold, even when the doubt seeps in, even when the silence stretches longer than you expected, because somewhere deep down, you know you're not punishing yourself. You're protecting something sacred. You're making space for the woman you've never met, but who has always been inside you. People around you won't understand. They'll ask why you're so distant. They'll tell you to go out more, to meet someone, to stop overthinking. But how can they know that what you're doing is not seclusion, it's sacred immersion? You're not hiding, you're descending into places within yourself that no one else has ever seen. And once you go there, the world on the surface feels shallow. Carl Jung spoke of this as a kind of death, the ego losing its grip, terrified of becoming irrelevant. It panics, reaching for old habits, tries to lure you back into relationships that kept you small, into roles that kept you needed. But the soul has its own language, one that doesn't scream. It waits, it lingers, it insists. And in this quiet war between the ego and the soul, you begin to see things differently. You realize how many of your past choices were driven by fear, not love. Fear of being alone, fear of not being desirable, fear of time slipping away. And now, stripped of distraction, the fears rise, not to drown you, but to be seen. This is the encounter with the shadow, not a monster in the dark, but a mirror, showing you every version of yourself you hid to survive. The one who said yes when she wanted to say no. The one who made herself small to be kept. The one who confused being wanted with being worthy. She's not your enemy. She's the part of you that needs holding. And this is why the silence hurts, because you're finally facing the woman you've spent years trying not to become. But she's not weak. She's just honest. And she's tired of hiding. You begin to notice that you're no longer craving the attention you once did, not because you've become cold, but because you've become full. Full of your own breath, full of your own presence. And with that fullness comes a kind of grief for the years you lived in fragments. It's here in this liminal space that something beautiful begins to bloom. At first, it's subtle, like a breeze, a small shift in how you speak to yourself. You catch the old voice rising, the one that says you're behind, you're too late, you're too much, and instead of obeying, you pause, you soften. You say, I hear you, but I'm not going there today. That's power. Not the kind that performs, but the kind that protects. You no longer offer your body to those who cannot meet your spirit. You no longer sell your softness in exchange for closeness. You wait, not because you're passive, but because you're discerning. You've learned that your energy is not a currency, it's a sanctuary, and not everyone deserves to enter. Still, you wonder, will anyone ever understand this version of me? The one who no longer begs to be seen, but sees herself? The one who chooses stillness over stimulation? The one who doesn't need to be completed because she's finally becoming whole? That question lingers in the quiet hours, but so does something else. Peace. The kind of peace that doesn't rely on answers. The kind that doesn't perform. The kind that simply is. And in that peace, you begin to see yourself not as someone who's waiting, but someone who's arrived. You remember how many times you've tried to fit yourself into spaces too small, relationships that required you to shrink, dynamics where your light had to be dimmed so others wouldn't feel threatened. You remember the way you smiled through discomfort, stayed through silence, gave through depletion. And now you promise yourself, never again. Because you've learned that abstinence isn't about denying yourself love. It's about protecting the kind of love that honors who you've become. It's not a lack, it's a filter, a way to clear out the noise so what's real can finally find you. And when it does, if it does, it won't feel like a rescue. It'll feel like recognition. You won't be chosen out of desperation. You'll be met, wholly, by someone who doesn't dim your fire but adds to it. And if that person never comes, you'll still be whole, because you've already chosen yourself. Jung called this the process of individuation, the journey of becoming who you really are, not the mask, not the persona, but the self beneath it all. And the truth is, not everyone chooses this path. It's lonely, it's messy, it requires patience, and the ability to sit with the kind of silence that echoes back your truest fears. But it's the only path that leads to peace. And in that peace, a woman emerges. Not a girl chasing affection, not a role playing out someone else's script. A woman who carries her own presence like a quiet storm, who doesn't need to speak loudly to be heard, who doesn't chase love because she is love, rooted, awake, enough. If you've made it here, if these words feel like they've been echoing in your chest long before you ever heard them, then maybe you're on that path too. Maybe the silence you feel isn't abandonment, it's birth. Maybe the longing isn't for another person, but for yourself. The self you left behind when the world told you to be someone else. And maybe, just maybe, this time, you're not turning away.
There's a quiet kind of strength that only grows in the dark. Not the darkness of despair, but the darkness of gestation, of becoming. When the world goes quiet and the noise of desire falls away, something softer begins to rise, something older than memory, something deeper than words. And for the first time in a long time, you don't feel like you're disappearing. You feel like you're arriving, slowly, steadily, in pieces at first, but arriving all the same. There are moments when it still hurts. You catch yourself missing what you used to cling to, the rush of a message, the warmth of a body next to yours, the comfort of being needed, even if that need came with conditions. But now you recognize the difference between craving and connection. You feel how your body no longer vibrates at the frequency of urgency, how your heart no longer races for breadcrumbs. You want something truer now, something that doesn't cost you your peace to feel seen. It takes time to grow comfortable with your own presence, to sit with yourself without flinching, to meet your own eyes in the mirror and not look away. But with each passing day, the silence that once felt like punishment begins to feel like protection. You start to see how your solitude isn't a cage, it's a canvas, a space where something sacred is painting its way into form. You don't need to fill every empty moment anymore. You no longer scroll to silence the ache. You don't rush into company just to avoid the questions that come in stillness. You let them rise now. You let them breathe. Why did I feel I needed to be wanted to feel alive? What was I hoping to find in someone else that I had abandoned in myself? These aren't rhetorical questions. They are invitations, keys to doors you didn't know you were allowed to open. And the more you ask, the more you feel it, a subtle shift. Your energy recalibrates, your spirit steadies, and the love you used to beg for becomes the love you begin to embody. You're not waiting for someone to come and complete you anymore. You've stopped measuring your worth by how many hearts chase you. You've stopped confusing being desired with being loved. Now desire feels different. It's no longer a game or a transaction. It's not about being consumed. It's about being seen. And you know that real love, sacred love, doesn't arrive because you chased it. It comes when you've built something strong enough within you that no one can take away. Jung spoke of the self as the union of all parts, not just the polished ones, but the raw ones, the parts you've hidden, the parts you've judged. And maybe that's what this journey really is, not a test, not a punishment, but an unfolding, a chance to become whole again, not because someone else sees your value, but because you finally do. You begin to move differently, speak more gently, breathe more deeply, not because you're pretending to be healed, but because you're no longer pretending to be broken. And that shift is terrifying for those who only knew the version of you that needed them. The world doesn't quite know what to do with a woman who no longer seeks approval, who no longer asks for permission to be enough, who no longer apologizes for her silence. So they'll call you distant, cold, unreachable, but you'll know that your distance is a boundary, your silence is a sanctuary, and your unavailability is not a wall, it's a filter. The ones who see you clearly will never be threatened by your wholeness. They'll be drawn to it, not to possess it, but to witness it. And if they never come, that's okay too, because you're not here to be chosen. You're here to choose yourself again and again until the world catches up to the rhythm of your becoming, to walk through the fires of loneliness without burning yourself just to be held, to sit at your own altar and know that you are already worthy. Eventually, you begin to feel the return of desire, not the restless kind, but the sacred kind, the kind that doesn't demand but invites, that doesn't manipulate but magnetizes. And when your body desires again, it won't be from scarcity, it will be from reverence. You'll know the difference because it will feel like peace, not hunger. You'll touch not to prove you are lovable, but because you are love. You'll speak not to fill silence, but because your voice is no longer afraid. And when love arrives, and it won't find a woman waiting. It will find a woman living, breathing, anchored, whole. But until then, and even beyond then, your journey continues, not towards someone else, but deeper into yourself. You begin to notice that the love you've cultivated within radiates outward in quiet ways, and how you listen, and how you rest, and how you say no without guilt, and how you meet life without needing it to mirror you back. You're not performing anymore. You're not playing small. You're not disappearing into someone else's story. You are writing your own. Every choice now comes from clarity, not fear. Every boundary is an act of devotion. Every step is sacred, not because it leads to someone, but because it leads to yourself. And when others see you, truly see you, they won't see a woman who gave up on love. They'll see a woman who redefined it, who walked away from what wounded her, who made space for something real, who waited not in fear, but in faith. Not because she was empty, but because she was full. Carl Jung said that what we do not integrate controls us, and you've chosen integration over illusion, wholeness over performance, depth over distraction. That choice changes everything. It's not loud, it doesn't need to be. You don't have to announce your transformation. You live it, you breathe it, and in your presence, others begin to feel it too. You become a mirror, not of what others want to see, but of what they forgot within themselves. Your silence becomes an invitation, your wholeness a reminder, your steadiness a call home. So if you've walked through this silence, if you've survived the ache of being unseen, if you've made it through the nights when it felt like you were the only one hearing the whisper, know this, you are not alone. And you were never meant to stay in the shadows. You were meant to rise from them. Not as someone desperate to be found, but as someone who has already found herself. You no longer need to be rescued because you rescued yourself. And that changes everything. Your love now is not a plea, it is a gift. Your presence not a performance, but a light. Your silence not absence, but power. And when the body goes quiet, it is not retreating, it is remembering. Because the woman who hears her soul speak no longer lives for half-loves, half-versions, half-truths. She becomes the whole thing. She is no longer available for anything less. And in that quiet truth, she doesn't disappear. She begins.